Hello, I'm Sarah. This is Hardcover Hearts, doing this epic, almost seems like it's a day-long filming extravaganza of my favorite books from 2023. This edition is all about translated fiction, which I read a lot of this year, and there's a lot that I loved. Now, I didn't include a series that I'm reading because I put it in the classics, and that series is a translated series. It's the Rougon Macau series by Emile Zola. So watch that video if you're interested in more about that. But let's jump right in with translated fiction for this year. So the first up, this is a book that was on the Booker International that I never would have read without that prompting. And this is Georgi Gospodinov's Time Shelter. And this is translated by Angela Rodel. There's the cover for that. And we have in this book, we have, it's really a book of ideas that manifest through this novel. We meet an unnamed narrator, and this narrator meets a man who has figured out the secret to supporting and helping people with Alzheimer's. And it is that they feel comforted and calm and happy when they are surrounded by memories and spaces that remind them of previous times. These spaces are filled with the mementos, the furnishings, the wallpaper, the radio it pipes in old broadcasts from those times. And all these artifacts really help calm and soothe what otherwise is a very disconcerting life for people who have Alzheimer's. And so he starts building these individual homes where people can live. And then it grows into small little hospitals and small communities and then bigger communities. And the whole idea just gets blown up. And so much so that it takes on political ramifications in different countries. So this German of an idea kind of takes over, but we also have this man trying to figure out who this person that he's been working with really is, and he's coming in and out, and he's seeing this idea kind of explode and go way beyond where he was thinking it could, taking on a life of its own. And it makes sense given all of the uncertainty that we are facing in the world, and with climate change, with the political ramifications of what's happening. You can see how nations, not even people undergoing Alzheimer's and dementia, would also be comforted by this. So this was very thought-provoking, very complex novel about memory and time and our relationship to both. I thought it was quite interesting. The next book I read, I did this in audio form, and it is Days at the Murasaki Bookshop, and this is by Satoshi Yagisawa, translated by Eric Ozawa. This is such a tender story about a woman named Takako, and she is stunned and shocked at dinner with her boyfriend, who invites her to his wedding. Turns out he's been having a relationship with someone else at the company that they both work for. And she just happens to be, way more prominent and way more beautiful and eligible. And he just didn't think anything of dating them both and telling this woman who thought she was in a relationship with him that he's getting married to this other woman. So she is stunned and heartbroken and kind of out of sorts, and decides that she can't possibly work at the same company with these two people anymore. So she gives her notice. She is taken in by, or at least gets a call from her kind of odd, eccentric uncle who owns a used bookstore in Tokyo. And he invites her to come live with him and heal and he wants to take care of her. And it turns out he's always had a very soft spot for her and always felt very close to her, but she really doesn't know him. And and hasn't really connected with him yet. So she takes a chance and she goes and lives with him at this bookstore and meets a community of people who are really building community and supporting each other and there for each other. And it shows her a completely different way of living, and at a time when she really needs it most. This is a tender, beautiful, lovely, lovely little book. The next one I read is not tender and not lovely in any way, shape, or form. This is a fantastic book, though. Really dark, very difficult read, but well worth it. And this started me on a series of reading this author. And the author is Vigdis Hjorth, and the book is Will and Testament, and this is translated by Charlotte Barslund. Oh, this is a devastating book about family disintegration around lies, around abuse, and false promises made to family. We have a woman, Bertolot, and Bertolot has removed herself from this family. She has cut all ties with her family and worked in therapy and really gone through everything that she needed to establish her own life and be independent. She has a brother, and the brother is, I think she's the oldest. The brother is the next oldest. And then there's a span of time where there were no children, and then there are two younger daughters. And the two younger daughters really don't understand why she's separated herself from the family. And the mother is someone who keeps wanting to pull the family together, but only on her terms, and only if nothing is said and about what happened. The father dies, and something that was always promised to the four children equally has been rescinded in the will. And she basically doesn't care. She's a little miffed, but she's kind of centered herself that that's their problem. But her brother is incandescent with rage about this. And he feels that he's had to deal with so much bullshit from this family. And that was the one thing that he was promised. And to renege against this is just beyond. And so he's going to take them to court over it. And it creates this huge upheaval of all of the dust that was settled. And it brings everything back to the forefront. And what's interesting about this, it's told in very sparse, very direct language, very cold, very clear, simple way of telling it. But there's so much in the construction and the repetition. And it's very much about traumatic memory and how victims replay it. People who feel that something was done to them will replay the trauma and re-talk about it until they get resolution, and sometimes even after. So this was a fantastic, difficult read, but I really vibe with Hjorth's way of writing. She's just really a force. This one, I think this one was on the Women's Prize, either the Women's Prize or the International Booker, one of the two. And that's how it came on my radar. And I'm so glad because this is an author that I really, really like how she writes. Then something entirely different. This is an Italian novel that I read. It's called A Silence Shared by Lalla Romano. And this is translated by Brian Robert Moore. And you've got this beautiful gauzy cover right here of a woman in profile. I'm not even sure if you can see that. And this is the story of Julia and a friendship she made with a couple and when things were really difficult during the war. It's in northern Italy, and it's during World War II. Her husband is an academic, and he keeps having to leave her and go to Turin where he teaches. And she is kind of in hiding-ish. She's in a safe environment with 2 aunts. And as she's in this little village, she's kind of bored. She's alone by herself, and she meets a couple. And this couple have also kind of fled from Turin and are hiding out in the same village, trying to lay low because they were partisans and are worried that they're going to be captured and something bad's going to happen to them. The husband, Paolo, is very sick. He has some kind of bronchial, maybe asthma, some kind of very difficult breathing problems that are really terrifying and very frightening because he doesn't have any medicine. And so Julia helps Ada, the wife, take care of him. And she's entranced by Ada at first, and Ada's vivacity and her beauty. You could tell that these people come from, they're classy, there's something about them that reads regal, in kind of diminished circumstances that everyone finds themselves. And she just befriends them and kind of latches on, but they latch on to her, and they form this really beautiful, very close friendship in a time where everything is terrifying and frightening. And it's about found family community in times of difficulty. And I just found it to be so soft, lovely, and a story that went places I didn't expect it. It didn't go to the places I hoped it didn't, thank God. But it was tender and beautiful all through. So this was just a little delightful gem. Another delightful gem, speaking of Italian literature, this is The Forbidden Notebook by Alba de Céspedes, translated by Anne Goldstein of the famous translations of the Elena Ferrante series. Gorgeous cover here. This is a book about a woman, Valeria, who was doing fine in her life. She thought she was doing fine, I should say. She's a mother. She works at an office. She has 2 children that are like teenagers about to go off in the world. And she goes by the store, the tobacconist, one day, and she sees a notebook, a journal in the shop window, and she asks to buy it. And it's an impulse. It's a complete impulse. And the store owner says no, that it's forbidden. She's not allowed to buy it. And then it makes her want it more. So she demands that it's going to be that she's going to buy this, battle of wills to get this notebook. And once she gets the notebook, she realizes so much about her life that she never saw before. Number one, the effort it takes to have a few single moments to write that are hers, because she is so much a mother, and everyone depends on her and ignores her space and her need for her own independence. She has none. She has no independence. So she's almost like she has this little secret that in this small home with this family, she doesn't know. She keeps having to move the notebook because she doesn't want anyone to find it. She keeps having to find reasons to be alone so that she can have her thoughts and write things out. She feels very guilty for this. And it starts to create a fissure and open up some space in her life for her to really think about what she wants and how would she characterize her life. This is a deceptively simple book that is heartbreaking in the deprivations with which she's been living, and once her eyes start to open, what she thinks that she actually needs and wants. I loved this book. It was fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. And it would be wrong to assume that this is just a domestic story of a mother, and we all know how this is going to end and how it's going to go. There's richness and depth in here that I thought was exquisite. Next up is a tiny, it's almost like a treatise. I got this from Fitzcarraldo. This is I Will Write to Avenge My People. And this is Annie Ernaux. This is a little twofold. The first part is kind of her manifesto about writing. Then the second part is her speech that she gave when she won the Nobel Prize. I think Annie Ernaux is a genius, and what she does with the idea of memory and autofiction and owning language is magnificent. I think she's a genius. I was so thrilled when she won the Nobel, and my French tutor, my private teacher that I have, she texted me and she was so elated, and I was so elated that she won. And this little sliver of a book really helps you understand her point of view and her purpose in writing and how she does it. It is magnificent. Especially if you're new to Annie Ernaux, this would be a great place to start before you kind of jump in. Oh, and this is translated by two different people. Allison L. Strayer translated one piece, and then Sophie Lewis translated the other. Then I read this. This is part of a project that I'm doing with Natalie at Curious Reader. We've been reading Magda Szabo's novels, and we read this one. It just about broke both of us. This is Isa's Ballad, and this is translated by George Szirtes. This is a New York Review of Books edition, and Magda Szabo is so good. She is so amazing as a writer. This is the story of Eddie, which is Isa's mother. And this is the story, it's a devastating look at her life after her husband dies. And she is taken in by her daughter, who has always kind of known exactly what she wanted and been very single-minded in getting it. And it's the splintering of this simple woman who lived in the country, who managed everything and knew how to do things and had a really lovely marriage with her husband. She is completely out of place and completely on her own and completely out of her depth when she's taken in by her daughter. And her daughter has a very busy life. She's a doctor, and Eddie doesn't really understand the ways of the city. She doesn't understand. She doesn't know how to meet people. And Isa thinks that she's doing the right thing, and she's, you deserve your rest. You've been working so hard. But what she's done is taken away Isa's autonomy to disastrous consequences and really heartbreaking misunderstandings and lack of communication. This book still kind of gets me when I think about it. Best intentions gone horribly, horribly wrong. It's devastatingly beautiful. Cannot recommend it more highly. Then something entirely different. This is Eiji Yagi's Diary of a Void, translated by David Boyd and Lucy North. And this is set in Japan. And this is, here, let me show you the cover. This is a wild little story. I don't usually like books that go into a little bit into the surreal or very surreal, but this had just enough of it that made it really enjoyable. And the premise is so fantastic. We have Miss Shibata, who one day in the office just out of nowhere got sick of being the one who always had to do kind of like the housekeeping kind of crap for the office. So she had to make the tea and clean up and do all of this. And she out of nowhere, she doesn't even know why she said it. She said she couldn't do it because she was pregnant and the fumes were bad for her. And with that one statement, her life completely changes. And the reaction that people have to her changes. She's given privileges and she's doted on and given all this attention. And she is overwhelmed and a little delighted by all of it. This was entirely hilarious. She starts to keep a journal and a diary because she realizes that she has to figure out what her body should be going through at different times if she's going to carry out this lie for an entire pregnancy. And so as she kind of goes through and does this diary of where her baby should be progressing developmentally, she starts to become a little more unhinged and a little more attracted to the idea of this baby that's not growing inside of her. This was quirky. I laughed. Really funny, and it was a little sad. And there was a thread going through of loneliness and sadness. I thought it was exquisite. The next book I want to talk about was also in, I think, the Women's Prize and or the Booker International. Both of them outstanding. The combination of these two lists this year were fantastic. This is Boulder by Eva Baltazar, and it was translated by Julia Sanchez. Boulder is this loner, kind of this worker on this ship, cook, kind of comes and goes, lives her life on her own terms until she meets Samsa at a bar at one of the ports of call. And it's meeting Samsa and finding this very sexual, intense relationship starting to form. And she is completely mesmerized with Samsa and falls deeply, deeply in love. And they maintain this relationship for a while where Boulder will go out on the ship. And then when they comes back to port, she and Samsa will get back together. It's super hot, really passionate, very exciting. But then Samsa says she needs to move to Iceland. She's been given an opportunity at her job to advance, but she has to go to Reykjavik. So Boulder decides that she's going to come with, and they agree that they're going to move together and move to Iceland. And slowly but surely, Boulder compromises in small little ways for this relationship. And in one of the ways that she compromises is to agree, finally, to be a family with Samsa, and Samsa wants to get pregnant. And this is something Boulder really doesn't like children, doesn't want to be around children, doesn't care about children. And all of a sudden, her entire life gets subsumed with what's happening with Samsa and her pregnancy and their relationship and the changes that happen there. So being someone who is childless and childless purposefully, this was a very interesting read. I'm very happy to be reading about more people who are writing, more women who are writing about not wanting children, their reasons for not wanting children, and doing it very purposefully, very thoughtfully. And this was one of those books. Fantastic, kind of slim and really punchy writing, very provocative and just really fantastic. Absolutely loved it. I have Permafrost, which is Eva Baltazar's previous book that I have on my list that I need to read. And then my last of this is a book that blew my mind, very much still on the same theme, also part of either the Women's Prize or the Booker International. I forget which one. Regardless, it's exquisite. This is Stillborn by Guadalupe Natal, and this was translated by Rosalind Harvey. This book also dealing with motherhood, but in this case, this is really kind of a devastating book about two college friends who make a pact that these two women are not going to be like other women. They're not going to get married and then have kids and completely give up their lives and their futures and their aspirations and dreams for children. So much so that Laura gets her tubes tied and is dedicated to this, to their independence. So imagine her shock when she finds out that her best friend has actually changed her mind and is fallen in love with someone and wants to have a child. When they met and they were friends, they were living in Paris. They both moved back to Mexico City, and she moves back to be with her best friend and, tries to understand and tries to support her, even though she doesn't understand. The types of things that happen in this pregnancy are actually horrifying. So trigger warnings abound, but I think this is a worthwhile book reading because it goes in places you would never expect. It's about different forms of love, about familial love, community love, nature, love in nature, animals, all different expressions. And Laura really observes different kinds of examples of motherhood and it tries them on and tries them out and is pulled in to a relationship with a single mother with a very difficult child. She observes a bird nesting that now she has to watch in her patio, and then also what's happening with her best friend. This book is outstanding. The construction is so brilliant. This is one of those, for me, 5-star books. I will be reading this again. It is that good. So that is my list of translated fiction. I would love to know, have you read any of these and what were your thoughts? And thank you for joining me. I'll look forward to talking to you again soon. Bye-bye.